Good morning. It's January 25th, 2022. Welcome to Triggered. I'm Cory Morgan. I'm going to be hosting this show every day, Monday to Friday at 11:30 a.m. It is live. You know, we need those live options out there. The old ones of talk radio and those old standbys have gone by the wayside, but we still need live interactive sort of shows going on, and that's what we're doing here with the Western Standard. So thanks for those who are joining, and we're looking forward to building this audience as this show goes along. And I got a great one today. Comments are welcome, of course. One of the good things about being a live show, again, like talk radio or the old school, you can send them in. I read them all. I don't necessarily read them out, but, and I appreciate good discourse between the other viewers, actually, as long as you're being civil. You know, we can get crabby with each other, but we got to be polite to a degree. So today I've got a number of guests on, actually. I'm going to have Medicine Hat Cyprus MLA Drew Barnes. He's an independent MLA to come on and talk about a number of things with the Jason Kenney government. Then I'm going to have Kris Sims from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. She's the BC director of them. She's going to come on and talk about some tax things, and she's got a new hat she wants to show off. And at the end, I'll have a short chat with Peace River UCP MLA Dan Williams. He's been, him with another MLA, have called on the Kenney government to intervene perhaps and get post-secondary students back into classes even if they aren't vaccinated. So some interesting things are rolling. And of course, we have a whole bunch on the trucker convoy, which I'm going to talk about shortly. But before I get to that, I am going to talk about our sponsor, Bitcoin Well. And it's funny, you know, we've watched the stock markets. They're kind of bouncing all over the place today. Nothing seems to feel necessarily safe for your investments. Well, cryptocurrencies, of course, are a huge growing market, but we don't necessarily know what's going on with them. And that's what Bitcoin Well is great about. They provide the services to show you how to safely get into the cryptocurrency market, how to invest. You know, don't get into danger. You control your money. So it's non-custodial. It means you work through Bitcoin Well, you get your investment, but it's always in your control because there's some shady people out there, and these guys aren't. They're publicly traded. They're online. They've got a set it and forget it Bitcoin savings program. You can have monthly or bi-weekly deposits straight into your wallet. It makes it safe and easy, just like making car payments. So check them out, bitcoinwell.com, and look how Bitcoin can be something that's good for you. Now we'll start with what's got me triggered today. And there's always something got me triggered. This one's a positive one. I'm wound up, I'm worked up, but in a good way. Now I've been waiting a long time for a rational protest against government pandemic mandates to emerge. I mean, with the Freedom Convoy sweeping towards Ottawa and growing like a prairie fire, I finally have one. And since the beginning of the pandemic, I've been sporadically attending anti-restriction protests in hopes of seeing the basis for a groundswell of public opposition to these government mandates. And I wanted to see one emerging. And I've invariably left these events disappointed. To be blunt, the lunatic fringe has been dominating anti-restriction protests since day one, and it's kept common Canadians from taking part in them. I mean, I know there's a lot of genuine people who have been going to those protests, but they're getting overwhelmed by some of the less than rational ones. I mean, one protest I went to last year was in front of Calgary City Hall. The turnout was okay, perhaps a few hundred people in attendance. I had Dave Naylor with me, actually. I went to another one with another one of our members. I went to a number of them. And once the speakers took the stage, though, things went off the rails fast. Members of the Proud Boys were flanking the stage's security. Well, the speakers harangued the crowd about government conspiracies and long disproven rumors about vaccines, such as the one claiming they cause autism. Meanwhile, another table was set up in the back where loud music was blaring, and a fellow occasionally took up a megaphone to add his 2 cents while others were speaking. He had a related but different cause, I guess. While this was happening, protesters approached and verbally harassed drivers on the streets who were waiting for the light to change and happened to be wearing masks. I mean, I know it looks goofy when a person's sitting alone in a car with a mask, but coming up and banging on their windows and yelling at them isn't a good way to deal with it, and that's what they were doing. And slowly but surely, attendees on the periphery drifted away. And you can see the frustration and disappointment on their faces. They'd hoped to take part in a rational demonstration against government mandates and restrictions, but they wanted no part of this circus they encountered. And I observed this happening in protest after protest for the last 2 years. And despite the public growing weary and stressed over what appears to be interminable government restrictions upon their lives, the numbers at anti-restriction protests never really grew. They remained small, strange, and ineffective. Now, with the emergence of the Truckers' Convoy for Freedom, that's changed it all. Canadians have now found a protest against government restrictions they can comfortably support, and they're doing so by the tens of thousands. It's been amazing how something that began as a small group of truckers pushing back against cross-border vaccine mandates has turned into a massive, well-funded, and huge movement across the country in less than 2 weeks. And clearly, the citizens were eager to find a mechanism to express their discontent with government pandemic restrictions, and now they have one. Thousands of trucks are converging on Ottawa, while tens of thousands of citizens line the streets and cheer the convoys as they pass through their towns and cities. Nearly 60,000 people have donated to the cause on one fundraising site, and the total is nearing $5 million in donations so far. More than 500,000 members have joined their Facebook group to date. We've never seen a protest rocket into such broad public support so quickly. I mean, during the first week of the convoy organization, the legacy media, of course, ignored them. I mean, through alternative and social media, the movement expanded despite the lack of mainstream attention, which was great to see. Once the mainstream media was forced to take notice, their coverage was dismissive and critical. I mean, the bias was just clear and evident. I mean, if you really want to get your blood pressure up, watch the CTV coverage, some of these things. And now, the opposition to the convoy is becoming hysteric and even panicked. Power brokers, such as Justin Trudeau's close friend and advisor, Gerald Butts, took to Twitter to try and label the convoy as being a secessionist movement. He sounded outright deranged, and he tried his hardest to foster mistrust within the convoy. Swarms of all these newly created social media accounts and bots are appearing and spreading unfounded rumors about the convoy. They're accusing it of being a terrorist movement even, and falsely claiming the GoFundMe site has declined to release the funds raised. If you go to westernstandardonline.com, you'll find that is baloney, and GoFundMe has been releasing funds for this convoy. They're still welcoming contributions, by the way. So while annoying and almost offensive, the opposition to the convoy has been utterly ineffective. If anything, it's galvanizing supporters even further. Authoritarians recognize and realize the threat the convoy presents to their world of government control. They've been able to tighten the leash upon Canadians for nearly 2 years with virtually no well-organized opposition. The convoys changed all that, and the establishment doesn't know what to do. The protest began with truckers protesting against vaccine requirements, and it's quickly evolved into a general protest against government pandemic restrictions. The nation's finally seeing a tangible and huge pushback against government pandemic restrictions and mandates, which are increasingly absurd and appear to have no end. This is it. This is the movement I've been waiting for. Ottawa had best get ready, because I don't think they fully understand what's about to hit them, but it's about time. So that's what's got me triggered today. And like I said, it's triggered in a good way. Now, we got a lot of news going on, and we've been covering this constantly as things develop, as it moves along. And I'm going to check in with our newsroom. This is what we do every day. Dave Naylor is on standby. And let's see what the Western Standard has been covering today and what is coming up. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
Good, Cory. I got to say, that new Mexican haircut of yours really suits you.
Oh, gracias. Yes, that was, Jane went down, had some dental work. I will talk about that in a future show, with some stuff. I mean, the capitalism down there is amazing. And yes, I got this fine Mexican haircut for $5. And I mean, yeah, it was just criminal. I had to give him 10. I mean, for such a quick and good job. But yeah, it was a good savings. I appreciate that you noticed.
Hey, yep, somebody's got to. Yeah, lots of news already today on the westernstandardonline.com. Just recently, Calgary's famous porch pirate, Liberal MP George Chahal, admitted he was fined $500 by Elections Canada for swiping the pamphlets off a constituent's door. He didn't disguise himself very well when he was doing this. He was wearing a George Chahal Stampeders jersey, and the homeowner's camera picked him out pretty quick. We got a good exclusive from our reporter Mel Risden. Alberta Tory MP Arnold Viersen. He represents, where is it here? Peace River Westlock. He has come out and said he would oppose any carbon tax brought in by Erin O'Toole, his own party leader. You'll remember, Cory, that Erin O'Toole flip-flopped in the election and said his party would bring in their own carbon tax, which many experts said was even going to be worse than the Trudeau one. So that's a good exclusive from Mel. Things get worse for O'Toole. We've got a story on the riding of Foothills, which is home to the MP John Barlow. His electoral district association on Sunday night voted for a motion to demand an early review of O'Toole's leadership. They want it all done by June because they seem to think we're going to be in another electoral period pretty quick. And who knows, they may be right. As you mentioned, we got lots of good stuff on the truckers. We've got a good story. You remember back in 2019, Cory, when the Unite We Roll movement came into Ottawa and held a protest there. Well, we've got internal documents from the Privy Council, which shows just how basically afraid the Trudeau Liberals were. They were preparing for anarchy with their over-the-top security arrangements, and of course, everything went off peacefully. We've got a story on a former chief analyst from StatsCan who says, "Hey, if you think inflation is only 4.8%, you're kidding yourself." He says the consumer price index does not take in a lot of things that it should, and he thinks the actual inflation rate could be what it is in the United States, which is a whopping 10%. Our military affairs columnist Dave Naylor has got an interesting piece today on the defection of a top-ranking Chinese missile technician, missile developer. There was lots of hubbub earlier when the Chinese tested a hypersonic missile that was capable of flying around the world and defeating any defenses. So this Chinese scientist decided to defect, and there was a big cloak and dagger operation to get him out of Hong Kong with the CIA and MI6 of Britain. And just a really interesting read from Dave Naylor. And you talked about the truck convoy again, Cory. Eva, our reporter's got a story up on GoFundMe. There had been mainstream media reports that had been frozen this morning. We've talked to the organizer in one of the lead trucks who says no, we're all still good to go, and she's dispersing the funds. So a lot already on the site, Cory, and the news gods. There could be a lot more to come this afternoon.
Great. Yeah. No, I'll be talking to Makachuk tomorrow. He'll be coming on the show, and he can expand it. He also wrote a great column. Of course, we've got that building and crazy situation between Ukraine and Russia. There's just so much news going on. I mean, that's one thing for a news organization. We're never short of stuff to write about, but we're getting just overwhelmed these days with developments around the world. It's a crazy period to be alive.
Yeah, U.S. troops were put on alert as well, 85,000 or 8,500 U.S. troops. Not sure what they're going to do, except maybe stand at the border and watch. But yeah, that is going to be a hot international story. And with the Olympics coming up, who knows where that's going to lead.
Great. Well, thanks for keeping us up to date, Dave. I'll let you get back to work on writing those up. And as Nico has pulled up on the bottom to show, go to westernstandardonline.com to get the full stories on what Dave's talking about. These columnists, these reporters, we're covering it. It's breaking all the time. And I'll quickly get in. If you don't have a membership already, get in there and take one out. It's a free trial, $10 a month, better than an old newspaper subscription cost. And you don't have to get rid of all the old newspapers afterwards, and you'll have full access. You can do a trial period for a couple of weeks. And our retention rate, I know talking to James, has been fantastic. People try it out. They stick with it. Once that trial runs out, they continue because the subscription's well worth it. And that's what helps fund us to keep covering these stories, because as Dave pointed out, the mainstream media isn't reporting terribly accurately on some of these things. And we need these alternatives out there to make sure you guys are well informed. So thanks again, Dave, and we'll talk a little later. So yeah, as Dave said, we got a lot boiling out there. These are crazy times. Let's see, somebody's saying that the convoy has made the Guinness Book of World Records. That wouldn't surprise me. I'm not sure which record, though, the number of trucks or the number of fundraising. I mean, it's just been striking, though, how this has just rolled. I mean, I'll look. I've got that page open on my computer here just to get the latest update. So right now, I think I looked at it about 10 minutes ago. It was $4,512,000 raised. I'm going to refresh it. Now it's $4,535,000 raised. I see the most recent donation was $9, because again, some people have been saying, it's all just a few rich people funding this thing. No, it is almost 60,000 people have gone on there and made donations that average about $75, but some are as low as $9. And yes, some are as high as 10,000, but the bulk, this is grassroots. Despite what people are trying to say, there's no hidden agenda. There's no secret, group behind this. It's in the open. And I've spoken to Tamara, who's running that group. I've known her for a while. She's quite genuine. It's no scam. And that's why, tens of thousands of people are getting behind this. And yes, as Cheryl's saying, she's hoping Trudeau doesn't sabotage this amazing initiative. And, like Dave was saying, the Rally for Resources, which was a tiny fraction of this thing, had the federal government shaking at the knees. They were terrified. I can't imagine how they feel now that we've got thousands and thousands of trucks converging. I think the Western Standard is also posting they found a video of some coming from North Carolina, I believe. I could be corrected on that one. And of course, they're picking up steam through every town they go through. People are lining the streets, waving at them. We're seeing the general protest. The upset Canadians have found a way to take part, and they want to. They want to push back. They want to say, we've had enough. And yeah, I've seen some critique of O'Toole, from Stephen Folger saying he's useless. Well, yeah, it's questionable. I mean, what is it? He's just constantly on the mushy middle, when it came to this convoy, and now it's the carbon tax things. And now we've seen Foothills. I'm not on the board. Again, I have my views and everything, but I don't have a membership with any political party any longer. Foothills is actually where I live. John Barlow is my member of parliament, but people have had enough of O'Toole. Conservatives, we can't seem to find a leader we're happy with these days, but he's not doing himself any favors hiding from this. He just take a stand on something, O'Toole. Do something. Quit being mushy middle. We already have a jerk like that. He's called Trudeau. We don't want another balder, chubbier version of Trudeau. We want an alternative. Don't follow up always taking a stand and then bending and being like Trudeau a week later. People don't like it. It's not working. That's why we went into an election and absolutely nothing changed. Why? Because, yeah, you flip-flopped on the carbon tax. You flopped on the firearm control. And now you're just being weak-kneed when it comes to this convoy. I mean, I understand you don't have to be standing on the hood of a truck and waving a flag with them, but you can speak to it. You can talk to the frustrations that are driving Canadians to support this thing. Look at it. They're raising more funds than your bloody party is, aren't they? They're doing quite well. And they don't even get those generous tax receipts that you guys offer in political land if you give money to a political party. So pay attention. Look at this. We don't see something like this every day. This is outstanding. And O'Toole's letting this convoy roll right by him. A shining light has been, of course, Pierre Poilievre. He's back there. And again, as a lot of people like to keep expressing, they really wish that Pierre had taken the leadership of the party back when he ran and then backed out. Maybe when the next opportunity for a leadership race comes, Pierre will get in there because, Pierre is the best member of parliament that Alberta never had. And he does have some Alberta roots, but Poilievre is just refreshing. He's speaking out. He's not afraid of, anybody. He's actually bound to the wishes of his constituents and to what he feels is the right thing, as opposed to feeling bound to servitude towards the party that he's involved in. And again, that's what tires people, is this blind faith in their party. I mean, you don't want to be in there just constantly causing havoc, but if it's always about the party and nothing else, then you've lost sight of why you got elected in the first place. So seeing Pierre speaking up like that is great and refreshing to see. Another person who spoke up about his party and was critical of it was Cypress Medicine hat MLA Drew Barnes, who's going to be coming on with us pretty quickly here. And he ended up on the outs and removed for the party for it, but he's still speaking up and serving his constituents. So we're going to have a conversation with him right away. Before we get to him, though, I will get to one of our sponsors. We got to cover that. That's how we pay those bills. We're not getting those tax dollars to keep rolling like some of the other media outlets. We rely on you guys to subscribe and get on board. And you've been great. We got a lot of subscribers, and we rely on these sponsors. We got the Canada Shooting Sports Association. These guys are great. They're at the CSSA-CILA.org. And, if you enjoy firearms, if you're considering getting into firearms, this is the site to go to. Check them out, Canada Shooting Sports Association. And there's so many resources there on whether you're a collector or you want to get into target shooting or you want to go hunting. They show you the way they organize. They have listings of firearm shows, things such as that. Plus, they have legal challenges out there on behalf of firearm owners because, of course, the federal Liberal government is trying to take them away. They want to take away your right to own and enjoy firearms. The Canada Shooting Sports Association is helping you push back. Just like with the truckers, we got to stand up for ourselves. Nobody else is doing it for us. So get over there, check out their website, take out a membership, and help those guys help you. Okay. Let's bring Drew in to talk. I haven't had him on for a while, and it's always a good conversation. There you are. How you doing, Drew?
Cory, good morning. Nice to see you.
Yeah. You see, I've already got a good head of steam up and going as usual. So people are certainly getting tired of my ranting and looking forward to some more reasoned discussion with you now.
Okay, okay, let's do it.
Great. So I mean, recently you'd put out a release talking about a culture of cronyism. I mean, we'll start there with the United Conservative Party and some of the issues. I guess that was sort of sparked over the whole Casey Madhu affair, I guess you could say, to put it lightly. What prompted you to write that, and what point were you trying to make, Drew?
Well, thank you for that, Cory. Yeah, let's start with that specific example. I was ejected from caucus for speaking out on behalf of my constituents. When the Premier and the UCP was on the right track, I would say so. When they were on the wrong track, I would say so. And here we had Minister Casey Madhu violate which is a standard Westminster legislative practice. You don't dare get involved in a constituent's legal matter, never mind your own. And the fact that it got to this point, and the fact that here we are where the minister wasn't immediately relieved of his duties is such a surprise. And Cory, I've been such a fighter for economic freedom, individual opportunity, and smaller government from the start. I mean, when I look at what's happened in Alberta the last little while, let's look at the corporate losses where governments picked winners and losers. Not only did Premier Kenney lose 1.3 billion on the Keystone, when you look at oil movement by rail, I just shake my head, and I think of all the empathy for the hardworking taxpayer out there working hard, raising a family. Rachel Notley invested about 2.1 billion in setting up the oil by rail. Then Premier Kenney comes along and divests not even all of it for about 2.1 billion. The poor taxpayer, there's so much needed accountability and value for tax dollars and lower taxes that it's time to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to be able to speak of, we were wild rosers together in the past, and I mean, we're good small c conservatives typically, and we believe in capitalism, but crony capitalism is an abomination of capitalism. I mean, it's not real capitalism. That's people working inside and cutting their own deals. It's not somebody working their way up and creating a product or service that people want to purchase, and it almost invariably fails. I mean, we do need somebody holding the government to account on that. I mean, the NDP do what they will, but we know that, well, due to their ideology, they would probably be even more involved in affairs with things. We need conservative voices of conscience going on in there, but anybody speaking up in caucus will perhaps find themselves sitting with you and Todd Lowen in the side seats if they dare to question it, I guess.
What one more or many more would be welcome. But yeah, absolutely. Government shouldn't be in the business of business. I mean, Ralph Klein said that well, and look what he did by getting our taxes down and putting 35 billion in saving. As this government grows and grows and grows, it makes you wonder about the level of the fairness in contracts handed out. Hey, Cory, I'd like to start. Let's look at the big emitters' carbon tax that they pay, and how that money all gets rerouted and redirected to solar and wind and those kind of renewables. I'm told that Alberta is the only jurisdiction in North America that pays for that anymore. And do we ever see a full accounting on where that money goes? I don't. And so let's look at also what Premier Kenney and the UCP did with the recall legislation and the citizen-initiated referendum at the end of last session. I believe they're still not proclaimed, but regardless of that, he set the bar so high on both citizen-initiated referendum and recalling your MLA or your Premier or your local elected representative that it's almost impossible to achieve. And let's look at some of the values of direct democracy to hold politicians accountable, to make sure we get value for our tax dollars. And I think of Switzerland. In Switzerland, 50,000 Swiss can sign a petition after any federal law, and they can negate or uphold that law. Switzerland today doesn't have a carbon tax because after the Parliament of Switzerland attempted to put it in, 50,000 Switzerland people signed a petition, and they had a referendum, and they ended the carbon tax. And my God, you look at how unfair the carbon taxes hit rural Alberta and Alberta in general, with our carbon intensive industries that have provided so much opportunity for families and communities. Cory, politicians need more accountable. And as you said in the Wild Rose, we talked about this lots 10 and 15 years ago.
Oh yeah, it's frustrating. And I mean, recall I get tired and frustrated being baited and switched. I mean, that was a campaign promise. I thought it was a good one. I understand you don't want to make it too easy. We don't want to go the day after the election and have some sort of low bar and we're constantly trying to recall people and pull them out. But when a person gets too frustrated, they have to have or should have a mechanism to change it. And we have none until the next election, though we were promised it. And not only, as you said, they made a cooked legislation. We know the bar is set ridiculously high. Even if they ever actually give it full assent, nobody will probably ever be able to reach it. But even then, they're afraid to bring it in. They've never actually brought that bill. That they haven't done the final step on it. The time is going to expire before the next election, before they impose it. And that tells me the government is actually quite afraid that somebody's going to successfully utilize that against them.
Yeah, exactly. They, just proclaim it, make it law, and let the next government make that law effective, make it so it really has some teeth. But Cory, that's an interesting point. I mean, I've heard for months now about how Premier Kenney and the UCP hasn't met expectations, how he was given the solid mandate for economic freedom, fiscal conservatism, individual opportunity, how he was supposed to pick this real fight with Ottawa, and he hasn't done it. And now I'm hearing more and more it's about his broken promises, his saying one thing and flip-flopping. And, we're in a situation where we're going to have to show Albertans that we will give accountability, we will give economic freedom and individual opportunity, and it's time for change.
Yeah, well, and you were, I believe, on that Fair Deal panel, weren't you? Traveling a bit, or you took part in some of those meetings, if I recall. I mean, that was addressing a bunch of issues that Albertans have been very concerned about for decades. And again, none of those recommendations seem to be in process. They talk, they strike another committee, they start another study. Speaking of cronyism, you get your hands on one of those study contracts. Boy, you could do really well for yourself. Just ask how it went with the looking at energy issues there with the panel there too.
Yeah, Cory, another good point. Like, we've got 87 MLAs, I've got a couple of good assistants. I've got lots of resources and I've got lots of desire to serve on those committees. We're already paid by your tax dollars. Use us way more. And the Fair Deal panel was a perfect example. 80% Albertan to the mic and said in one form or another, they want a fair deal with Ottawa, whether it's opening the Constitution and Senate and Supreme Court change, or whether it's, more resource movement and pipelines or more free trade. 80% of Albertans went and strongly spoke about it. And here we are 2 years later and nothing's been done. Maybe some side of, I think it was $8 million for a report to study the RCMP, and I don't know who got that contract, but the Albertans have went to the mic and spoke up, and again, Premier Kenney's not doing something about the size and cost of government, not doing something about how high our taxes are, not doing something to enhance resource movement and pick get us a fair deal with Ottawa, including if that means pick a full fight, has left the UCP government out of trouble, and back to those wild rose values and policies that we stood on 10 years ago. A lot of them are ringing more true today than ever.
Yeah, and it gets frustrating. I mean, it's not even just not doing it, but the fact that they know we want it. That's why they held the panel. That's why they sold it to us during the election. That's why it was a campaign plank. And now they're not doing it, which I feel deceived, and that gets me upset. But so another point, though, there are a lot of good MLAs in that government. They were good, dedicated, genuine people. We don't hear from them. It's a very top-down controlled caucus. But we've seen a lot of cracks going on in there, too. Is there perhaps a chance for change? And we got this leadership thing coming up. I know Premier Kenney's doing everything he can to run the process in his favor, but we might see things change pretty quickly here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a weakness of leadership. There's a lot of good people in there that need more of an opportunity to speak up on behalf of their constituents and behalf of economic freedom, conservative values. I don't know what's going to happen at the leadership review. I'm not a UCP member anymore. Of course, I'd be voting for a review. But if they just, when you look at all the games that the Premier and the leadership team have played, going on CA meetings, putting in the gates and the structure to protect his leadership, if they'd have just governed with a strong conservative mandate that 56% of Albertans gave him, that would be way, way better for our kids, our families, and our communities. And that's a shame. And I think that's where the lost opportunity, that's where Albertans' frustration comes from. I just had a solid conservative rancher call me and say that he absolutely, will never support the UCP again because they've done more damage than the Notley government, which is hard to hear. And people are looking for those economic freedom, individual opportunity values, and we're not getting it.
Yeah, and it's frustrating. I mean, it shows in the numbers. As you said, more than half of Albertans only a few years ago selected that government. I mean, he had the support. It was his to lose, and he's been losing it. We're down to a record low number for a government in power, and we could be in for a terrible mess in a couple of years if we don't sort that out. But they don't seem to be paying attention. As you said, it's those games. Albertans don't want to see it. Political weenies like us perhaps like playing the constituency games a bit and doing that sort of thing. But I mean, the reality is it's the majority who's important and who is in charge when voting day comes. And they're going to reject this party if something doesn't change radically and soon.
Yeah. Well, coupled with not firing Minister Casey Madhu was the release that we basically can't easily appeal our traffic infractions now. Albertans are appalled that more liberties are being taken away, more opportunities for freedom are being taken away. And again, from a supposed conservative government. But there is the next election, unless the premier decides to call it sooner, and of course there is a fixed election law, is the last Monday in May 2023. I have Albertans every day drop in or phone and make suggestions and ideas, and I'm grateful for that. And there's going to be a lot of talk in the next little while about the direction to go. We'll see if the UCP leadership review triggers anything. Time will tell. But again, Cory, Albertans are telling me time and time again that they expect Alberta exceptionalism to have the chance to come through. We're the best risk takers in all Canada. We're the best at developing agriculture, oil and gas, and forestry. And we have a government taxation is too high, spending is too high, regulation is through the roof, and the talk is the opposite of getting it done, and they're wanting change quick.
Yeah, well, and as we're getting to the end here, I know things are still so fluid in the next year and change, but you're sounding like, I guess, in one form or another, who knows how it'll be, but you're still planning to represent Cypress Medicine Hat as their member of the legislature in the next election then?
Yeah, I still believe I have the ability and the energy to serve. Cory, I'm so grateful for the chance to represent Cypress Medicine Hat for 10 years. And just yesterday at the trucker rally here in Medicine Hat, thousands of people out in support, hundreds of trucks on their way to Ottawa. The fact that these people have raised, I think it's over $4 million now, and it's like $75 at a time. They've set up a great committee and a structure to make sure the money goes to where it needs to go. These are everyday, hardworking, risk-taking Albertans that I'm grateful they come to me and tell me their ideas and their opinions and their needs, and that's rewarding. And at this point in time, I'm very much enjoying it and very much believing that I have the energy and the ability to serve. So let's see what the future brings.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming in and talking to me today. Before you go, where can people, I know we can't find out what you're up to through the UCP site, so where can they see what you're doing and keep in touch with you, Drew?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Cory. Please, you can call me at 403-528-2191, or better yet, just email me at drew.barnes@assembly.ab.ca or Drew Barnes, Cypress Medicine Hat MLA. I would appreciate hearing from each and all of you, your good ideas, your needs, and your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Drew, for being the conservative voice of conscience out there in that big, lonely legislature. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
All the best, Cory. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks. Great. Yeah, it's always good talking to Drew. As I said, there's some common sense coming out of him, and common sense, well, I'm afraid got him punted out of there. I see, yeah, if you want to interact with me, one of my favorite playgrounds is at Cory B. Morgan on Twitter, if you're into Twitter. It's a great place for good exchanges, not long-form debate and things like that, but it's fun. And if you want to see stories breaking, go there. WS Online, I believe, is the Western Standard Twitter account, things like that, and you see those stories as soon as they come out. And of course, if you're a subscriber, you'll see those things popping up. Go to our Facebook page. Everything gets posted there on the Western Standard Facebook page, and share it. This is part of how we can create the alternative media, bypass the mainstream who are keeping information away from you. Share the Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter. Do those things. This is how, again, that truckers movement's just taking over everything, and they did it despite the mainstream media. The media tried ignoring them. What happened? Well, the word got spread through Facebook. It got spread through Twitter. It got spread through Rumble videos or all of these alternative forums. And if we as citizens keep those active, we don't have to be reliant on that sick old institution of mainstream media to feed us the information. Yeah, the Casey Madhu thing, it's difficult. I noticed Cheryl had also mentioned, she likes him, and I liked him. I mean, he was good. He was standing up to municipal politicians when he was in that role. He doesn't back down. Unfortunately, just one of those political terrible missteps. And when you're in the role, though, of a justice minister, you have some very serious and different obligations on you. You just have to really watch for every possible form, to make sure it never seems like you're interfering with the justice system in the slightest way on your own behalf. It's important to have that separation. And I was very disappointed that Mr. Madhu seemed to have lost his common sense there when he made that phone call, and he's paid a price for it, and the Canadian government's paying a price for it. And it's just not a good scenario altogether. A very otherwise effective member of the legislature and one of the lone ones at Edmonton is now sidelined. Again, it's his own fault, but I don't like seeing it. It was a terrible shame. I'm going to speak again back to one of our sponsors. We got our guest coming up in a little while, but I got some news time to talk on other things. But let's talk about Bitcoin Well again, because these guys are worth multiple mentions because there's so much about with them. Again, they're non-custodial. They will put it there. This isn't some foreign thing, for example, with the internet services, things like that, where you're going to call some call center and you don't know who you're talking to, or you only communicate through email. Bitcoin Well actually has in-person white glove service. They have free one-on-one consultations. They're in Edmonton, Calgary, Montreal, and Winnipeg. And then everywhere else in Canada, they got virtual consultations. So you can get online and speak to a live person to help you set up your Bitcoin wallet, help you understand Bitcoin, and help you feel safe buying Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin in person, take control of your wealth. And they've got ATMs all through the West that are selling Bitcoin. You can find it at bitcoinwell.com online. Boy, I'm stuttering today. Check them out, though, and it'll show where all those ATM locations are, and you can see how you can take part in the cryptocurrency world in a safe way. That's where people are worried about. It's your money. You worked hard for it. It's bad enough the government's stealing it all over the place. You don't want to get caught up in some cryptocurrency scam or something like that. Well, Bitcoin Well, these guys are legit. They'll help you through the process and explain that often complicated world of cryptocurrencies. So pretty soon I'm going to have Kris Sims she's the BC director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Much abused lately. I've bounced around her appointment times all over the place. She put on a splendid new hat to come on yesterday and we couldn't show it off. So she's gracefully agreed to appear a little later quickly here today to talk to us because she has lots to talk about. So I appreciate her patience with us and your patience. I see all the viewers and listeners are back. Yeah, we had a bit of a hiccup yesterday, but it's all going great today. It's ironed out. Live. Oh boy, I love this live stuff. I love the interaction, but at the same time, if something goes on with you during a live show, it can make the vein in your head pulse and get near breaking and makes it hard to recover. So we're doing great. Thanks for tuning in. I see Kris sitting in there already. Maybe it's a little early, but I'll pull her into the show if she's ready to roll. Looks like she's nodding. Hey, Kris, how you doing?
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Good. Yes, you're looking much more clear, and we should have you on a show today when we got her going right to do full justice to your appearance.
Thank you.
Yes, and you've got the hat back on from the Taxpayers Federation. Do they sell those at the Taxpayers site? I take it.
They sure do. We've got fun T-shirts, bumper stickers, all the swag you could ever want to tell Trudeau to back off. So go check that out.
Yes, and we certainly need to tell Trudeau to back off every way humanly possible. So always lots of tax issues to talk about. The days have ticked by, but it's still valid. One thing that came from the Federation, though, was the exposure of how many civil servants have been doing quite well throughout the pandemic with job security and even raises over that period of time.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that our team in Ottawa put together there along with my friend and colleague, Federal Director Franco Terrazzano. And it's basically to send the message, wakey, wakey, we're not all in this together. While a lot of us were getting, pay cuts or losing our jobs, or we had business owners that were losing their entire livelihood. Government employees were typically getting raises and they weren't losing their jobs by and large. So it's a huge divide. And one of the main reasons why we put out that report is so that next time there's a bureaucrat or a politician standing at a lectern telling you we're all in this together. No, we're not. That politician or bureaucrat probably has not missed a paycheck this entire mess. Whereas you compare that to the private sector and those folks I just mentioned, that's not the reality for them at all. I'm sure you're in the same boat, Cory, but I've lost track of the number of waitresses and bellhops and fitness instructors and flight attendants who have reached out and spoken with us, who are barely hanging in there. I mean, financially, but also personally. The past 2 years have been awful. And we need to send that message that, hey, we're not all in the same boat. We might be in the same storm. Some folks are on big frigates and the rest of us are in dinghies.
Yeah, well, something I've said in the past, nobody is ever, in whatever position of power, whether an elected official or a senior bureaucrat, voted to push for increased restrictions and lockdowns when they didn't have a guaranteed income for themselves. I always figured maybe we should have a committee of a bunch of people to say, okay, this committee is going to decide on the lockdowns, but we're going to have a number of people who will lose their jobs, will shut down their businesses, so that at least they can put that input to say, yeah, because they're the ones making the sacrifice, not these bureaucrats, not these politicians. They're the ones who suddenly can't make their rent or mortgage or car payment or clothes for the kids to go back to school, you name it. Let's get some of these bureaucrats living on $2,000 a month, like they said, serve to saving everybody. I got a feeling restrictions would suddenly lighten up a great deal.
It would be an epiphany for many people. And we need to remind folks that the bureaucrats and politicians typically make six-figure salaries. I mean, the base salary for a member of parliament is more than $180,000 per year. Now let's start adding on the fact that most of their housing is paid for, their food through per diems while they're in Ottawa is paid for, much of their transportation is covered, and then you layer on the gold-plated benefits, and then, hey, if they have any sort of a role in the House of Commons, if they're a whip or a critic or anything like that, it just starts adding up with those bonuses. And so, yeah, they're not hurting. But the folks who are getting locked down and who are getting taxed to death, they're certainly hurting. And so it's really good to see this report come out from the CTF, doing the quick math, even here in BC, around 30,000 government employees got a pay hike during the pandemic. It cost more than $60 million thereabouts for BC taxpayers. So that's just provincially. Federally speaking, it's way bigger, obviously. And we need to also remember that it's not just the bureaucrats. The politicians themselves, the MPs, took 2 pay increases during COVID and had the audacity to say something to the effect of, oh, well, it's already automatically baked in. It's in the legislation. What are we to do? Well, I don't know. You're sitting in the legislature. You're the lawmaker. Maybe reverse those pay hikes. And they also dipped into the emergency wage benefit. So that pot of money that was supposed to be for those hairdressers, for those waitresses, for those small businesses to keep the lights on, every single political party other than the Bloc Québécois dug their hands in there and gave it to some of their staff who can work from a laptop anywhere.
Well, in the Bloc Québécois of all parties to make a point of principle, and good on them. Hey, at least you did that. It's just enraging. I mean, when we're suffering like we are, and we just got to remind people there is a whole different world. I mean, those of us in the public sector can't even imagine those kinds of benefits and security. And we're not talking about stripping it from them. We're just saying, bear us in mind when you're coming down on us with these restrictions.
Yes, and maybe don't take the pay hike. Just stay in. Just don't keep us in mind when you're locking us down, and don't give yourself pay raises while everybody is on the outs.
Yeah, it's the same all over the games they play. Calgary City Council, they're a little out of your reach, but it's the same. They set up a whole committee in the last council. Oh, this is a citizens committee that's going to deal with whether or not we're going to raise or lower pay. And when they came forward and said, okay, we don't need any pay increases for you guys, the city council all gathered together and said, well, we're going to reject that finding and give ourselves a raise. And they were furious on this committee. And now they're back into it. They took another raise and they said, well, yeah, but the committee wasn't working right again. Like, enough games, you guys, tighten the belt a little with the rest of us.
And that's to the point where you're just speaking with them there. This is why we need recall at City Hall. We absolutely do. We have recall provincially here in BC, and while it almost worked once, it does serve as a deterrent. By and large, now they're not angels, don't get me wrong, and I don't want to give them leadway, but by and large, you don't see nearly as many shenanigans at the BC legislature in Victoria. And I think one of the reasons for that is we have recall. So if they really screw up royally, we can have a by-election and we can turf them in between elections. We need that kind of tool, that kind of power at city halls here in BC. So it's good to see that it's at least somewhat kind of maybe sort of happening in Alberta, that you can drag the municipal politicians out to the curb if they screw up that much. And we need that because people who aren't part of government, we need a voice. We need to have agency. We have to be heard by these people because we're the ones paying the bills. Same sort of thing. It's one of the reasons why I think this trucker convoy has picked up so much steam, because people have felt that they haven't been listened to over the past several years. And just, us here at the CTF, we've been fighting the carbon taxes since it started. To give you an idea of what diesel costs these guys, here in BC, we've got 2 carbon taxes, okay? And the 2 carbon taxes combined are about 30 cents a liter. Start doing the math on a 100-gallon tank. You're well over $200 to fill up both of those tanks on one of those rigs every time, just in the carbon taxes. So yeah, we need a reckoning for sure.
Yeah, and that cuts into their bottom line. And the recall, again, you got to have at least that little bit of threat to say you can be fired between terms. We had a very singular situation in Calgary with Sean Chu, who's a councillor, and there was a lot of scandal and things like that. That's a subject matter for a whole different show. But I think the only reasonable way it could have been dealt with, if it was really beyond the pale and his electors really wanted to remove him from there, they could have had that ability. Those people who are so upset with him right now could be working on that process and truly give it back to the voters. As it is, they're frustrated, and there's been a lot of political games. The mayor has shut him out of every other possible committee and form of work he can do in there, which again it is not serving his constituents well. Let the man do his job until you can legitimately remove him, if you can. But we don't have it. Jason Kenney campaigned on it. He made one. I don't know if you caught that part where I was talking to MLA Drew Barnes, and he made it in such a way that you have to have, I think it's something like over 50% of the eligible electors, voters, not even those who came out, but those who were eligible, which is often fewer than even who came out to vote in the first place. You're not going to get it. We know that. Anybody who's gone out petitioning, it's just ridiculous. But, it would give these politicians an out if they would just genuinely do it. It takes it out of their hands. When an MLA or a councillor or somebody really does something beyond the pale, say, well, you know what? I leave it to the voters. Here you go. Here's your chance. Let us know if we should get this person out of the position of power or not.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't necessarily have to end with their firing. It could give them a new mandate and a new lease on life. We've seen several examples in the United States, for example, where they've tried to have big recall campaigns and it looks like it's going one way, but turns out people came out and said, you know what, we're going to give them a pass, or we're going to give them another chance. And then they can go ahead with more of a clear conscience and more of a clear mandate, and they can keep on doing their job. So it does work both ways. It's a very good tool. It's check and balance, and we absolutely need that. Here in BC, it's a bureaucrat, it's not a politician, but the politicians were so surprised, for example, that it had been going on for years, that they could definitely face recall over it. In Kamloops, we had one of the heads of the Thompson-Nicola Regional District through an amazing amount of work at this tiny little newspaper called Kamloops This Week. Freedom of Information requests, hundreds of them. And they spent months and months tabulating the expenses. We're talking like thousands of dollars spent on a champagne room in Whistler, thousands of dollars handed out to buy jewelry and gifts for staff, all on taxpayers' dime. Just completely not cool. Like, any taxpayer of any side of the spectrum would not be okay with that. And here we had some of the elected politicians in the Kamloops area saying, oh, I didn't know that was against the rules. Really? Really? You didn't know that buying liquor store gift cards and handing them out to staff and your friends was not okay? Well, here's a good wake-up call and a reminder showing you that it's not okay. But we don't have it. We don't have that City Hall recall, and it's one of the reasons why we need it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed out the other example. I think probably what you were mentioning was like Gavin Newsom in California, and he's stronger now than ever because they tried to take him down. They failed by a large margin, and now he can say, there, see, and it's unfortunate because I think he's a terrible governor, but that was up to the voters to deal with. And if you whimsically try to recall somebody, it's going to backfire on you. So, I mean, it's got its own check and balance built in.
For sure. You can say that people have spoken. And you know what? Luckily, there's going to be another election around next time. And if your side didn't win during that fight, work harder for next time. Get out the vote, do more door knocking, get more volunteers on side, send more emails, get more letters, get more signatures. There's ways of doing this. But having a petition, having recall legislation at the city hall level, and frankly, we'd love to see it at the federal level too, that would really help some of these folks be more listened to. Because right now, as we can see, it just feels like you're sitting on the other end of the phone line. Back in the day when it was a rotary phone, you could just take it right off the receiver. We're not hearing anything back.
No, well, and unfortunately, the attention of the electorate can be a little myopic. So if they've done something really bad in year one, they know if they just keep their head low for 3 more years, chances are they'll get reelected anyways. The recall won't allow them to get away with that tactic, perhaps. Back to, I guess, you are in the mecca of carbon taxes in Canada, and you've got a couple of them on the go, and energy costs are hitting everybody terribly right now. I'm just wondering, how much have emissions gone down, though? I mean, you guys must be one of the lowest emission provinces in the whole country, right?
You're cute, aren't you? Yeah. No, it's not going down. Emissions are going up. You're absolutely right. We have 2 carbon taxes. We have the highest carbon taxes in North America, and emissions are going up, not down. They've gone up around 11 or 10% in the past 3 years, and they've gone up in 5 of the last 7 years. And I need to stress again, the 2 carbon taxes combined on diesel here, it's like 30 cents a liter. On gasoline combined, I think it's around 25, 26 cents a liter. So you figure that when you're filling up a minivan, that's 75-liter minivan, you're really paying through the nose with carbon taxes here, but emissions keep going up. And I need to remind folks that back in 2008, when the BC Liberals hatched the carbon tax, they told us lots of stuff. They said it was going to stop at $30 a ton. They said that it was going to be revenue neutral. They said that the carbon taxes would somehow create a whole bunch of affordable alternative energies. And they said emissions would go down. Today, none of that is true. Okay? We're at, well over $30 a ton. We're now locked into Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's $170 a ton plan within the next 8 years, and our emissions keep on going up. So all it does is make you poorer. It takes money out of your wallet and does nothing for emissions.
And that's the point that I appreciate. And yeah, that's why I led you into it, because you guys are the only ones pointing that out. I mean, if you're going to justify that tax at all, and I don't think most of us would like to see it in any form, at least if it worked, if it actually did what you claimed it would, if we looked at BC and emissions were 10% lower than the rest of the country, then people who are concerned about emissions could say, yes, every province should be doing the same. But all it is, as you said, is making people poorer, and it makes them move. I mean, you vote with your wallet. As I've been, tweeting, I've been on vacation. I was in the States for the last 10 days, and state by state, you see those prices. And I was right in Yuma, and the California border is only a few miles away. You make sure, and you see the Yuma gas stations are packed, because as soon as you cross into California, it goes up by more than $1 a gallon. What happens? California residents come over and fill up on the other side of the border. I mean, that is costing the business people in California as well. It's just, you just don't win with these stupid taxes.
Oh, for sure. Well, before the COVID hell broke loose on our shores, it was just standard operating procedure for a lot of people in what they call the Metro Vancouver area, or, the Lower Mainland. So basically the region between, say, Hope and North Vancouver. It was standard for a lot of folks just to cross the border. Like, you could literally see the gas station as you're driving on Highway 1. You can see the American gas station right over there. It's like 2 clicks away. And so it was standard for folks to cross the border because it took, no time at all. There was no hassle. And you'd typically be saving more than $20 just filling up your minivan every single time. You combine that with a little bit of strategic grocery shopping, and you do that as a mom every 2 weeks, you're saving your family serious money every single month. And that's because of the tax difference. Right now here, I'm in the eastern end of the Fraser Valley, so just past Chilliwack. I think last I checked last night, the gas price is $1.67 a liter for regular.
Yeah, and it's I think $1.35 here, and that's a significant difference. And similarly, I'm going back a few years, but from Grand Prairie to Dawson Creek up in northern BC there, or Yeah, Dawson Creek. I get Dawson Creek, Dawson City mixed up. I've been to both, but BC's the Dawson Creek one.
Yes.
And if you drive that, there's a fast gas right on the BC border, just on the Alberta side, middle of nowhere. Aside from that, there's a reason he built it right there, because everybody going home to BC makes sure to top that tank up as much as they can before they head back to Fort St. John or Dawson or wherever they're going. I mean,
see you later. Enjoy the cost savings. Yeah, I know. It's wild. If you combine all the taxes here, it's about 72 cents a liter in taxes. So in Metro Vancouver. So that's the 2 carbon taxes, that's the ridiculous transit tax, that's the excise tax, it's sales tax. It's around 72 cents a liter. I remember when gasoline was less than 72 cents a liter, like as the whole price. Now the taxes are about 72 cents a liter.
I'm a bit older. I don't want to admit how low it was when I started driving.
That's all right.
But speaking of stupid taxes, and there's a lot of them out there, something that's popped up, and I want to hit upon, is the home equity tax that keeps getting floated and keeps getting denied. I see the Canadian Housing and Mortgage Corporation is trying to deny that they ever even funded a study on it, yet it's right there.
That's so weird. You know, if you have a conviction that you think a new tax on homes and home sales is going to magically reduce the cost of homes, own it, man. Just own it. Accept that in yourself. And then go forth and sashay into the future and write your studies and do all your data. That's fine. But then don't write a study. Don't administer a study. Don't fund a study. And then say, oh my goodness, look at this study. We did this by accident. We didn't know. It's one of the sillier things I've actually seen at the federal government level, and that's saying a lot. So we have emails back and forth between the head of the CMHC and the head of this study, like openly saying with their fingertips and I would imagine faces if they're mumbling out loud about home taxes and equity in your homes and a time for a change and taxes. So it's super weird to see them saying, oh, we didn't mean to. I mean, I don't mean to stub my toe or accidentally drop my coffee cup or something. That's an accident. How do you accidentally spend $250,000 and have a month of exchange over emails on a study about home taxes?
And multiple times. I mean, this happened a year, and someone goes, well, it reminds me of somebody, it's like they're putting their finger out to touch an element because they really feel they got to touch it, and then they get burned and they pull it back and deny it. But they still keep putting that finger back. They want to tax. They want it. They desperately want it. They just don't know how to get away with it yet. That's why they're studying. They're trying to figure out how they can package this and sell it and give it to us. And what I can't think of more taxes more frightening than coming after the very equity we're working our butts off to try and build up. We don't get to live in government funded housing while our trust fund pays for side homes for us. We have to work for it, and they want to take a chunk of it. And that's just odious.
It's a huge chunk, and I would recommend that your viewers take a look at our home equity tax calculator. It's on our website, taxpayer.com, and we've got 3 different versions in there. So you just need to enter in your income, sorry, but that's how the tax is based, and what you bought your house for, and then what you think you're gonna sell your house for. And there's 3 different options of what the tax would look like. And in some cases, it's tens of thousands of dollars. And we got to be clear, the average home, I'm not talking a mansion with Miami Vice jacuzzi tubs and stuff. The average detached home in Vancouver is already more than $1 million. Same thing in Toronto. So if you just want to see your average rancher or your split level, if you've got it detached from other homes, boy, that's already over $1 million. And if you think that they'll just stop there and only tax the people who are stuck in Vancouver and Toronto, well, I got a bridge to sell you. So yeah, the home equity tax is a very serious thing. They've been sniffing around this now for years. We've been on them like a dog on a bone, and we've been blowing the whistle on this now for years. And so I encourage everybody, go take a look, see how much a future home equity tax could cost you, and make sure you phone your MP and you say, hey man, don't you become casing around my house. Because there's 2 ends of the spectrum here, right? There's the older folks who have put all of their time and effort into their home equity, and they'll eventually downsize, and they'll use that money to live on, for the rest of their lives, because they don't have, 2 gold-plated pensions coming their way. And they sometimes give some of that money, that home sale money, to their Gen X kids or the millennial grandkids, so that they can use that money for a down payment for their own house. At the other side of the spectrum, if you've got, say, a young couple that's just starting out in, the housing ladder, they often squeeze their way into a condo and they save every nickel. and then they have children and they want to use every nickel from that sale to put into a down payment for their next home, maybe with a backyard for their kids and their dog. But Trudeau wants to take some of that money. Why? So he can blow it? Even if they put through this home equity tax, as they've imagined in this study through CMHC and UBC, the Trudeau government would blow through that in about 5 days.
Yeah, so we know it would keep rising. And some of the language from those studies and the people that put it out was really, I found offensive. And as per the title of the show, I get triggered often. And that triggered me because they talk about it being a windfall and act as if people fell into that home equity. Like, I didn't buy my first house until I was 40. I didn't get to that point where we had the down payment or I had other priorities. But when Jane and I did that, we had to scrape and save and convert our RSPs. And we weren't rich. We didn't have some handout. There was no windfall. We bought the place and we've maintained it and worked on it. And then hopefully we're building some equity in it.
Yeah,
to have you guys act as if I won a lottery. Just my ass.
And it's not just that language, the lottery language. They actually said building equity and raising money while you're sleeping and watching TV.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wish I could.
As if, man. And so, the language is offensive. If you read the whole study, actually, you'll smell a very distinct disdain for private property ownership. That's really the bee in their bonnet.
That's where you get to the underlying issue, and that's much deeper matter for an entire other column and show, but into the whole ideology.
Just practically speaking, let's separate the idea that they don't like the idea of private property ownership and they want you to own nothing and be happy and all that stuff. Scrape all that away. Let's just take it on the math face value. If you're in Metro Vancouver and you know that you're going to have to pay a home equity tax when you sell your house of, say, 10 grand, 15 grand, 20 grand, what do you think you'll do with that price tag? You'll stick it on the listing price, right? So that will make the cost of houses go up because that is a price increase. Or you might sit on it. You might decide to not sell. You know what? I'm going to park it right here and I'm not going to sell. That reduces the supply of houses. So even if we scraped away everything else, if they put this through, it would very likely make the listing price cost more and reduce the supply of homes. How on earth is that going to make housing more affordable?
It's absurd, and we have to keep exposing it and talking about it. And I appreciate that's what the CTF does. Like I said, that's why I like getting you guys on, because you're one of the few people talking about the government taking less of money. Just about everybody else is talking about one cause or another. It's going to cost me more somehow. So where can we find more information on what you're up to, Kris, and the Taxpayers Federation in general?
Hey, and likewise, the Western Standard is one of the only media outlets that is talking about this stuff consistently. So good on you. Folks want to check out our website. It's taxpayer.com. We've got so many different petitions there, no matter what your thing is. If it's home equity taxes, if it's guns, if it's carbon taxes, we've got something there for you. And the way we're doing that is not only do we deliver those petitions to the House of Commons, it's the way that we build our army and keep you folks informed. So the next time it's time to push back on a specific MP or a party or something like that, we can call it out. We can say, hey, everybody, email right now, right? Or make a phone call right now. So it'd be appreciated if you all headed over to the website, taxpayer.com.
Great. Well, thanks, Kris. Thanks for your patience with me. And like I said, if you make it to Calgary after all this scheduling rigmarole, we'll buy you a beer or something for your troubles. I want
a steak, man.
Okay, well, we'll check the Western Standard budget here.
You bet.
All right. Thanks again. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. Keep up the good work.
Bye. Right.
So yes, that was Kris Sims. Go to taxpayer.com to see more of what she's up to. As you can see, she's just loaded with common sense and knows those issues. And they're out there digging into this stuff and pointing it out so we can see it. I mean, they want it to slide under the radar, those who want these taxes, those who are in government. And the Taxpayers Federation doesn't let that happen. They dig into those boring studies and papers. Blacklock's reporter, I give them credit to. They find a lot of these things and it gets amplified. We need to do it for ourselves because no one is going to do it for us. Speaking, before we get to my next guest in a little while here, I'll get back to our sponsor because I got to keep talking about these guys because they pay our bills and they're great. Speaking of keeping your money away from the government, of course, cryptocurrencies, that's where people are going. I mean, get away from those central banks, get away from that fiat currency, get into something independent. Well, cryptocurrencies provide that. And that's what Bitcoin helps you along with. And again, it just seems like such a, I mean, I still have a tough time wrapping my head around how some of that works, Bitcoin mining and things like that. But I mean, we've seen it's a huge growing area where people can do transactions just like any other currency. And Bitcoin, well, these guys are there to facilitate your participation in that cryptocurrency market. And they've partnered with Power ED by Athabasca University. Like I said, these are a good, legit local company, by the way. And they created a free online curriculum about Bitcoin. If you go to bitcoinwell.com/learn, you can enroll what they call Bitcoin Academy. And it helps teach you about what's going on with it. And there's corporate options. This is something we got going on at the Standard. You can pay your employees in Bitcoin with the Bitcoin savings program. And, you can start learning some of those benefits. A little portion of the check goes in to your employee's wallet through a Bitcoin payment rather than cash, and it helps them save their own little side savings with Bitcoin. So check these guys out, bitcoinwell.com. and see what they can do for you. It's pretty interesting. I was always a little leery of those sorts of things, but seeing these guys being able to explain it in lay terms, how these cryptocurrency works makes you a lot more comfortable. Because again, we work really hard for our money. Nobody ever, of course, wants to be ripped off. And these guys will make sure you don't. You can safely participate in that market. Okay, so coming up, yes, so we got a show full of common sense today. We've got, he's going to be on in a few minutes. He's the Peace River MLA, Dan Williams, and he has been speaking up on behalf of post-secondary students in Alberta who still, I believe at this point, can't go back to school if they haven't been vaccinated. Meanwhile, as I believe he pointed out, Alberta Health Services workers have had that exemption, an exemption or had that lifted because we need them. And now we're seeing these students losing out on education. These are short windows. I mean, it's important, and we got to get them back in there. And he wrote a letter with the Cardston Siksika MLA, Joseph Shao, as well, I believe, on that. So I'm going to have him come on in a minute or two here to expand a bit on that, because it's good to see the MLA speaking up for constituents. We're in this time where we do feel frustrated and at times as if nobody is speaking for us. Some MLAs really are, actually. They're out there. They're questioning policies. And they're doing things for us. So I know we're on the case of the UCP quite often. But as I was talking to Drew earlier, there's some good members in that caucus. There are, even if we might be a little frustrated with how the whole party's going at times. And Dan's been making a really good point there. So I don't know if he's ready to go in the background there. I see him in the lobby. Maybe if there's a thumbs up. Let's pull Dan in and chat with him about what he's been up to. Hey, Dan, how you doing?
I'm good. Cory, how are you doing?
Very good. Very good.
Now
so
I'm coming from Lacrete, and I'm still working on getting some high-speed internet up here. So if I slow down, I might turn off the camera, but I'm here with you.
Yeah, no, and I understand. I live in Pritis, just outside of Calgary, yet we're barely above dial-up levels. Maybe I'll bring some MLA on and nag about how we're supposed to get that rural high-speed rural in at some point or another too, but I won't sidetrack you on that. So I appreciate you coming on to talk to us today, though. And as I said, it was just good to see a government member speaking up on issues, that perhaps others might not want to talk about, but we're concerned for our post-secondary students, the unvaccinated ones who are missing out on the once in a lifetime opportunity of education. So can you explain that letter that you and Joseph put out?
Yeah, Joe really was the one who instigated it at first. It's something that I'd heard a lot in my constituency. So he suggested we write the letter. And I was on board 110%. I just spoken to the minister about this a few days before. And so we directed our letter to the presidents of major institutions in the province, these post-secondaries that are publicly funded, and really are the gateway for my constituents, for your family, for everyone to get that secondary education that they're going to need to become pipe fitters, to be building the province as carpenters and tradesmen and women, but also lawyers, nurses. I mean, we want more of those, doctors, teachers like my wife. It really is the gateway. So these institutions decided at some point last year, they had the option to allow testing. Many of them did have testing so that these young kids could have some flexibility and make the personal choice that made sense for them when they talked with their family, talked with their physician. But it seemed they almost completely cold turkey left that and corporately went over to a mandated vaccine only to be on campus. And even right now, these institutions are doing distance learning virtually. You're not even on campus and you must be vaccinated when you're doing it virtually. So it's a huge frustration for these kids because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. My dad was the first one in his family to get a university education. He was in business for a long time, went back when he was in his 30s, got a degree. That was a big deal for us in my family. I mean, eventually for me, when I came around, it was really a big deal. Everyone was proud to see their family member get a university degree, a kid who made good from rural Alberta. So I don't know if these post-secondary education institutions understand that really is rural Albertans predominantly that they're targeting here, because constituencies like mine have a lower rate of vaccination than those like, downtown Calgary or Edmonton. So they're going to have less opportunities. And so our brightest and our young aren't going to be able to build their own future with their family and build Alberta's future.
Yeah, well, and possibly some of these mandates may have made sense when we didn't know as much about how the vaccinations were going to work. If we thought, and we genuinely did think a vaccine could stop the transmission. So if we could, halt this pandemic in its tracks with a vaccination, great, and then we're protecting. But now we're seeing, well, no, clearly the Omicron cuts through vaccinations like a hot knife through butter. So at least that justification for forcing vaccination upon students really doesn't hold water anymore at this point. And as you said, for distance learning, I mean, that's ridiculous. You can't catch COVID through a computer or a camera. But why do you feel they're being, and actually just to throw in while I'm at it, George Kaposki, I think it is, was asking about faculty and staff. Are they under the same restrictions, and are you concerned about that? And again, why do you think they're being so digging their heels in on keeping these restrictions going? Ooh, might have had a bit of that internet freeze. Oh, there we go.
So I think those two are actually connected. I think the faculty and staff would be a large factor in motivating these universities. I think that most average common sense people would say, surely if AHS, when you do deal with acute care settings, emergency. If AHS, I'll just continue, Cory. Hopefully it sorts itself out. If AHS in these acute care settings and dealing with vulnerable populations when it comes to COVID, if they can find a way to allow flexibility for their staff to continue working, then surely so can universities, right? So can somebody who's doing, yeah,
and we're getting those internet gremlins going on up there from up in Lacrete. But the point that Dan was making, and that was in the letter, or I believe in some other communications on his Facebook page, was, yeah, if we can make those accommodations for nurses, AHS employees, people in hospitals, understanding the importance of them being in their jobs or participating, why can't we apply that to post-secondary students? I mean, it only makes sense. We can keep people safe. We can move ahead if we can do it for AHS. Why not for students and faculty? Yet they're still got their heels. You're looking a little more clear there, Dan. How's it going?
Well, we'll give it a go. I'm sorry about this. We got to get Minister of Service Alberta getting some high speed up here.
I'll get on that, Nag. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. The point you were finishing there, or you're summarizing for me, if AHS can do it, so can universities. I think that sometimes the faculty and the administration might be wound up. My fear is that there's going to be a section of Alberta's population that coming out of this Omicron, where we have every sign to say that we're in a very good spot. We have to learn to live with this, and we can't just keep locking things down and putting restrictions in. It looks as though we're at a spot now where what might hold us back are people who have been wound up by the media, people who, and I hope it's not the faculty of these post-secondary institutions that are motivating this, who aren't going to want to go to a normal way of life again when it is safe and where there are opportunities to be flexible and provide education for these kids. So my plea to these presidents that I wrote with Joe Scow is be common sense about this. Take an approach where you can say, take the politics out. These are just young kids looking to get a career. They're looking to try and provide for their families. They want to get ahead. They want to be that next generation, maybe the first generation in their family to get post-secondary education. Let's not deprive them of that. And let's not deprive Alberta of the workforce and the talent that we need to build this economy, because the biggest problem that we have right now is labor shortage in our province. That's a good problem. Our economy is red hot. It's been red hot for the last year. COVID just has blinded so many of us to not be able to see it with our frustration, but it's piping up. So let's not put ourselves in a worse spot. And so these presidents and these institutions have an obligation. They have an obligation, a societal obligation, to try and fit in as much flexibility as possible for these kids, and to do it in as common sense a way as possible. I mean, these are public institutions. We pay for these with our tax dollars, right? They're largely subsidized. And I think that they should be considering how to serve all Albertans with that.
Absolutely, and I do appreciate that. I mean, as a more middle-aged guy myself, okay, a couple of years and hey, it's been horrible with the restrictions and job pressures and things like that. But it is just a couple of years at this point in my life. It doesn't have the impact like somebody who's in their late teens, early 20s. You only get that once, and you miss out on these years of university. And there's much or college or trade schools, all sorts of things, and it isn't just the educational part. There's a social aspect, there's networking, there's being there in person. That's a lot of the benefits you gain from those educational years that these guys are missing out on, and they can't get them back.
Absolutely. I think that government in any form shouldn't be trying to pick winners and losers, but God forbid, we definitely don't want post-secondary institutions and
looks like
academics
kind of
winners and losers.
There we go. Okay, well, maybe we've gotten your points in though, and I really appreciate your coming on. I like I said, I feel your pain very much. We have a similar service where we are. I'll start dragging other MLAs on to talk about that rural internet service. I've got a self-interest in it.
Happy to come back. I'll try and make sure I'm in better reception next time. And real grateful that you guys are speaking out on this, because there's a lot of common sense Albertans out there, average folks that are concerned with this. You can be pro-vax, anti-vax. You could not care about any of the politics. You could be apolitical and just have a kid who wants to be able to go to university or get their degree. And I think in the end, that's got to be part of my job, is talking for them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just got to keep the interest of the students in mind paramount over the parties, the politics, or ideological views on medication. So I really appreciate you coming on to join me. Where can people? I noticed you were active on Facebook and some other areas. Where can they keep up with what you're doing, Dan?
Yeah, follow me on Facebook. Search out Dan Williams. You'll find me at MLA Peace Country. And real happy to have folks follow along. I'm going to continue being as thoughtful, but let's be honest, speaking truth to power and reasonable as possible when it comes to this. I see a lot of movement in our direction as reasonable conservatives talking about the path forward here. So I think folks should be ready for a good spring and good years to come.
I sure hope so. We're all tired of everything else. So I'll let you get back to things up there in Lacrete, Mr. Williams, and hopefully talk again soon.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me.
Great. So yes, that was Dan Williams. And I mean, I do like to remind people, because, we're pretty prickly with the UCP at times, but, we got to remind there are some members back there. They're speaking up. They're doing their jobs. And it was good to see, these guys have got to speak up for these students, as I said. And as Dan said, you only get one opportunity for these. What's that Cheryl saying? An Alberta dental student won his case against mandates at the university. I'm not sure on that one. I'll look into it, but I hope so. I mean, there's definitely going to be some individual challenges, especially when you're getting to the higher levels as a dental student. How many years did you already put in? And you're potentially losing out on your education now. I mean, this is not a minor thing. And we're seeing the pandemic winding down. Let's get some rational talk. Safety was paramount. Absolutely. Okay, we can understand that. But we're seeing that the students aren't terribly at risk, and we have means of mitigating risk. We can get them into those classes. There's something that's constantly going on is virtual classes. I mean, yeah, we can do a bit of things that way, but it's just not the same. And as I said, at these schools, you do a heck of a lot more. I mean, this is where you network with other students. Those are the business relationships you have later, or personal relationships you have later. You learn a heck of a lot more than just what's in those textbooks, and you aren't going to learn that staring at a computer. Though I appreciate you guys staring at this computer to learn from me right now. Once things get easier, we'll bring in more in-person guests, though I don't know if we're going to get to a point of live in-studio audiences. We'll need a bit of an expansion for that. But I mean, this world we're developing where we're not in person anymore, and we're substituting, and we got the technology to kind of do it, but it's wrong. We're social creatures. I was... I torture myself with the news at night. I have to keep up on the issues. And they were talking about some sort of festival, I believe, is going to come in downtown Calgary, a music thing. They're going to have Chantal Kreviasik, I think, and a few others. I believe it's an outdoor venue. It's like a spring thing or something they're doing. And then they start talking, but it's going to be 50% capacity, and there's going to be no food or drink served, and everybody's going to be masked, and everybody's going to be socially distanced. Screw it. I'm not going out to that. Why the hell would I want to go out to that? I can watch it on TV. Why do live concerts still draw tens of thousands of people? Why do live football games still draw tens of thousands of people. It's because we want to be together. It's the experience. There's more to it. I mean, let's face it, when you're watching a football game, you get a better eye on what's going on in the game watching it on TV than when you're sitting up in the stands. But it's that experience of being there. It's being with others. It's the whole package that's important. And that's why these things still go. You can't substitute for it. I mean, we can to a degree. And when it comes to education, we can't substitute for that experience with virtual means. We don't have the ability. We've got a half-ass substitute. And hey, it's better than nothing. But for the amount that post-secondary institutions cost, and that's another issue altogether too, because I got some questions on how you guys manage to charge so much. We always talk about student loans and people graduating and worried about paying off that giant debt. Fair enough. But why isn't anybody talking about why it puts a person tens of thousands into debt to get the education in the first place? Man, you're at a university lecture hall with 200 students in it, attending for an hour of class. Where is all that money going? I mean, we got a lot of questions we can ask. So, I'm starting onto a side ramble, but I got a lot of concerns with our post-secondary system altogether. And as MLA Williams was talking about, though, we are in the midst of a labor crisis. We do need graduates, again, whether it's trade schools, university, whatever. This is for all of us. This is going to help fill those jobs. It's not going to be going away. I mean, assuming Trudeau doesn't shut us down, our energy sector is starting to go white hot again, and we need people getting out to work in it. And you don't necessarily need a degree to work in the energy sector, but there's a lot of actually positions, whether it's production accounting or engineering, we need those people in there as well. And we won't be able to fully take advantage of that boom if we don't have the employees to do it. So let's keep our post-secondary education going. Or another discussion, and there's something I wasn't going to bother Williams with it. I'd love to get Premier Kenney again or the health minister to ask, because we've had 2 years. Why is our ICU capacity still teetering on the brink of collapse all the time, every time we get nearly 100 people in it? I had somebody on Twitter coming after me. Well, it takes years to train nurses. Okay. We've had 2 years now. I mean, I know it's 4 years to train a nurse, but you upgrade them for the specialized training for an ICU. I understand that too. But we've had 2 years. And we haven't seemed to have increased that capacity a bit. Why? I mean, some people have pointed out, yes, we can bring in more hospital beds. I mean, it is wrong almost to always keep talking about beds. Beds are just beds. The hard part is getting the skilled, trained people to manage the patients, the nurses, the doctors, the support staff on every sort of level, pharmacists even. They've got to come out of those schools. We need to train new ones. We need to upgrade new ones. Well, what are we doing right now? We're shutting down schools. We're locking down schools. We're slowing the graduates. We're just compounding our problems. And it's not serving any of us very well at all. So let's discuss these things, one of which is getting these kids back to school without having these restrictions hammering them down. We got to get them there in person. So I'm going to get on to talking about, just reminding you again, if you haven't subscribed to the Western Standard already, please do get on there, check it out, westernstandardonline.com/membership. Take out a membership, $10 a month. That's how we keep these reporters going. This is how we, fund the columnists, fund Nico in here to work on the production. We can keep doing this content that other media outlets don't give you, but we rely on you for it. And of course, the more subscribers we got, the more of a good case we have to make to our advertisers to kick in and keep funding these things. So take out a membership, follow us on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, follow the Western Standard on Twitter, all those social media majors. If you don't like those big ones, go to Rumble, spots like that. I'm going to do another check-in before we finish. Speaking of fundraising, that Freedom Convoy 22, again, which was falsely reported as having the funds held. That's wrong. It's not true. And Tamara's a fantastic person. Nobody is misappropriating any funds. Anybody who's spreading that rumor, tell them right where to go. So let's see. My last check was $4,535,000. And there had been 58.9 thousand donors. I'm going to give it a refresh. $4,610,000 and 59.7 thousand donors. Guys, we have a steamroller going on out there of support for this Freedom Convoy, and it's just magnificent to watch. It's beautiful. I love seeing this go on. Great work, Tamara. Great work, all you hundreds of organizers, supporters getting out on the road. Look these guys up. Somebody had asked otherwise on how to, they don't go on Facebook, they don't go on YouTube. I'm not 100% sure. It's kind of a decentralized thing, but the best site for it is the Facebook site. If you look up that Freedom Convoy, join that, and you can get updates and things like that. And of course, we're going to report on it all the way through. We're seeing something happening in Canada right now that we've never seen before. We've never seen a protest or a groundswell like this. So support it, watch it. Let's shake up the majority. Let's shake up the establishment. Scare these guys. I'm not talking in a threatening way. I'm just talking about scaring them off of their entitled perches of controlling us, and let them know we're going to fire them pretty soon. And maybe they can go out and try and live on $2,000 a month like they've been telling others to when they shut down their businesses and their ability to make an income for themselves. So tomorrow I am going to have columnist Dave Makachuk on. Dave Naylor, our news editor, mentioned him earlier because he has been writing on international issues. He'd written on a recent thing with China, and he'd also written a great column on the Russia-Ukraine situation, which is just looming out there in the background, and it really could turn into a massive world issue. It's kind of scary watching how the troops are massing and the posturing going on. So Dave can help break down a bit of what's happening there. And I'm going to have Donna Kennedy Glanz coming on to talk. And it's going to be a bit more. She was a progressive conservative MLA years ago and it was involved in a number of things. And now she's spreading columns and talking and speaking out. And she'll talk a bit on crony capitalism and some of those problems with a large, bloated, entrenched government too. So be sure to tune in. It's going to be another good show tomorrow. And we'll keep updating on how that trucking convoy is going. And of course, lots of interesting guests. You got guests, ideas, feedback. Send them to me, cmorgan at westernstandardonline.com. And yeah, keep tuning in and I'll keep talking at you. So you all have a good day and I will see you tomorrow.